The long walk begins. Every morning, as the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon, Marcus would wake up. His alarm clock buzzed loudly, cutting through the silence of his small apartment. Marcus wasn't one to sleep in. He had a routine, a strict one. He had to get ready for his day, no matter how tired he felt. Marcus was a janitor at a local high school, a job he was proud of. He worked hard every day to make sure the school was clean for the students. But what most people didn't know was that Marcus didn't have a car. He didn't have the money for one. So, for years, Marcus had walked to work every single day, rain or shine. It wasn't just a short walk, either. He walked a full 5 miles, and he did it without complaining. He lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, and the school was on the other side. The walk took him about an hour, sometimes more if the weather was bad. But Marcus never minded. It gave him time to think, time to prepare for the day ahead. He loved the quiet of the morning, the streets empty and still, just him and his thoughts. After getting dressed in his old work clothes, Marcus would grab a quick breakfast, usually just a cup of coffee and a piece of toast. He didn't have time for anything fancy. He needed to get going if he wanted to get to work on time. As he stepped outside, the cool morning air hit him, and he pulled his jacket tighter around himself. He had learned to ignore the soreness in his legs, the blisters on his feet. It was just part of his routine. He had been doing this for years. The walk wasn't easy. Sometimes, Marcus would pass other people driving in their cars, and he would feel a pang of envy. How nice it must be to just get in a car and drive straight to work, he thought. But he didn't let it bother him. He kept walking. He had no choice. As Marcus walked, he passed the same sights every day. The old bakery on the corner, the small park with the swings, the houses with their yards and gardens. He didn't know many of the people who lived in the area, but he would always nod or smile if he saw someone. He was a quiet man, and that was just how he liked it. He didn't need much. His job gave him purpose, and that was enough. The walk wasn't just long. It was also lonely. Marcus rarely saw anyone else walking along the same route. Most of the time, it was just him, the quiet streets, and the sounds of his footsteps. Occasionally, he would see a jogger or a dog walker, but it was rare. It made him feel invisible, like a ghost passing through the town unnoticed. But Marcus didn't mind the loneliness. He had never been the type to ask for attention. He didn't mind being overlooked. After all, he wasn't doing it for anyone else. He was doing it because it was his responsibility. He had a job to do, and he took it seriously. As he walked past the houses, he could hear the sounds of people waking up inside. The sound of doors opening, car engines starting, and people getting ready for their day. But no one ever seemed to notice him. No one ever saw the man walking down the street, the man who worked hard every day to keep the school clean. But Marcus didn't care. He didn't need recognition. He didn't need anyone to thank him for his hard work. He was content in his silence. He did his job well, and that was enough for him. However, little did Marcus know, things were about to change. The students of the school had started to notice something. They had begun to see Marcus walking every day, and slowly they started to wonder why he was always walking. Why didn't he have a car? Why didn't he take the bus? One morning, a group of students were walking to school when they saw Marcus ahead of them, carrying his cleaning supplies and walking at his usual steady pace. They couldn't help but notice how far he was walking, how tired he looked. But still, he kept going. "Do you think he's walking all the way to work every day?" One of the students, a girl named Emma, asked her friends. "I think so," her friend said. "I've never seen him in a car." Another student chimed in. "That's crazy. Why would anyone walk that far every day?" They couldn't understand why Marcus would walk such a long distance. They had no idea about his struggles, about the fact that he didn't have a car, or that money was tight. They had never stopped to think about it. But that was about to change. As the students walked to school, they couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity. They had seen Marcus around, but they had never really paid attention to him before. Now, something was different. They had started to wonder about him, about his life. They didn't know it yet, but their curiosity would lead to something much bigger. And for Marcus, his long walk to work that day would be like any other. But for the students, it was the beginning of something that would change everything. They were about to find out what Marcus's life was really like, and they were about to do something about it. What would happen next? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Things would never be the same again. The students' discovery. As Marcus continued his long walk to work, the students couldn't stop thinking about him. What they had once seen as a normal part of their day was now the subject of their conversations. Emma, the girl who had first brought up the question, couldn't help but feel curious about Marcus. She had always seen him around the school, but never once had she stopped to think about his life outside the school. The next day, as they walked toward school, she spotted Marcus again, trudging along the same path he always took. His steps seemed slower now, the weight of his cleaning supplies pulling him down. Emma couldn't ignore the thought any longer. Something wasn't right. "Hey, look," Emma said to her friends, pointing toward Marcus. "I really think we need to do something. Why is he walking like that every day?" Her friend, Rachel, frowned. "You think he's okay? He looks exhausted." "I don't know," Emma replied, her voice filled with concern. "But we can't just sit by and do nothing. We should find out more." The group of students followed Marcus from a distance, keeping a respectful distance but watching him carefully. They noticed how tired he seemed, the way he looked worn out even before starting his day at the school. It struck them that no one had ever asked him about his long walks. No one had ever asked if he needed help. Rachel, always the one to speak up, was the first to suggest they do something about it. "Why don't we ask around? Maybe someone knows more about why he walks so far. There has to be a reason. And if there is, maybe we can help." Emma nodded. "I agree. Let's find out what we can do." Over the next few days, Emma and her friends began talking to some of the other staff members at the school. They started asking questions about Marcus, but every time they did, they were met with surprise. "Marcus, oh, he's a good man. Always on time and works so hard," said Mrs. Harris, one of the teachers. "But I don't think anyone knows much about his personal life." Another teacher, Mr. Lewis, shrugged when asked about Marcus's walks. "He's always been that way. Never complains, just does his job quietly." But as Emma and her friends continued to ask, they started hearing the same thing. No one really knew much about Marcus. He was a janitor who kept to himself, always showing up to work early and leaving late. No one had ever bothered to ask why he walked so far or why he was always so tired. The students' curiosity grew. They knew there had to be something more to Marcus's story, and they were determined to find out. They decided to approach him directly. The next day, after school, Emma and her friends waited near the janitor's closet, where Marcus would often be after finishing his work. When they saw him coming down the hall, carrying his mop and bucket, they gathered the courage to approach him. "Excuse me, Mr. Marcus," Emma called out, her voice gentle. Marcus turned, startled but smiling as he always did. "Hey there, kids. How's everything?" he asked, his voice warm. Emma took a deep breath. "We've been thinking about something. We noticed you walk to work every day, and we were wondering why. That's a really long walk, and we just wanted to know if you're okay. You look so tired some days." Marcus looked surprised by the question. For a moment, he stood still, trying to decide how much to say. He wasn't used to being asked personal questions. He wasn't used to people noticing him, let alone caring about why he walked to work. "I'm fine," Marcus said, his voice steady. "Just got used to it, I guess. It's my routine." "But why don't you take a bus or something?" Rachel asked, her voice filled with concern. "You don't have to walk so far every day." Marcus hesitated. He wasn't sure if he wanted to share his story, but there was something about the genuine concern in the student's eyes that made him soften. "Well, I don't really have a choice," he said quietly. "Money's tight. A bus pass isn't something I can afford right now. And a car, well, I've never been able to save up for one." The students were shocked. They had no idea Marcus was facing such difficulties. They thought he was just a quiet man who worked hard, but they never imagined he was struggling in such a way. Emma's heart sank. "We had no idea. You don't have to walk so far alone. Is there anything we can do to help? Maybe we could start a collection or something. We could help you get a bus pass or even save up for a car." Marcus smiled weakly, but there was something different in his eyes. He looked almost embarrassed. "I appreciate your kindness, but I don't need any handouts. I've managed this long, and I'll continue to manage. Don't worry about me." But the students weren't ready to give up. They knew they couldn't let Marcus continue to struggle without offering him some help. "Please," Emma said, her voice soft but insistent. "We want to do something. We can start a fundraiser, ask the school to pitch in. You shouldn't have to walk so far every day." Marcus looked at the students, and for the first time in a long while, he felt something shift inside him. No one had ever cared enough to ask him about his struggles. No one had ever cared enough to offer help. As he stood there, looking at the faces of the students, Marcus knew one thing for sure. He couldn't keep walking this path alone. And maybe, just maybe, the kindness of these students would change everything. The plan begins. The next morning, Emma, Rachel, and the rest of their friends gathered in the school courtyard. They couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. What they had learned the day before had stayed with them. They were determined to help him, to change his life for the better, just as he had been silently improving theirs every day with his work. "I've been thinking about this all night," Emma said, her voice filled with energy. "We can't just let this go. We need to do something big for Marcus. A bus pass isn't enough. He deserves more than that." Rachel nodded, her expression serious. "I agree. What if we start a fundraiser? We could raise enough money for him to get a reliable car. That way, he wouldn't have to walk anymore. Plus, we could make sure he doesn't have to worry about the bus, especially in bad weather." The group of friends looked at each other, a spark of excitement growing in their eyes. It felt like they had found a way to truly make a difference. "I'll talk to the principal," said Ethan, another one of the students who had become invested in the plan. "Maybe the school will let us set up a fundraiser during the next school event. We can ask people to donate, and we'll keep everything a secret from Marcus until the big reveal." Emma smiled. "That sounds perfect. We can even get some local businesses to help out. Maybe some of the stores around here would be willing to contribute." The students spent the next few days planning. They worked hard during their free periods, making posters, designing flyers, and reaching out to local businesses. Some of the businesses, once they heard about Marcus's situation, were quick to offer their support. The owner of a nearby car dealership even promised to help with a discount if they raised enough money. The students were thrilled, but they were careful not to let Marcus know what was going on. They didn't want to spoil the surprise. As the fundraiser started to take shape, the excitement in the school grew. Students from all grades began to donate money, some contributing small amounts, while others dug deeper into their pockets. Word spread quickly, and it wasn't long before even the teachers and parents got involved. The school community was coming together for a cause they could all rally behind. Marcus, of course, had no idea about the efforts being made on his behalf. He continued his routine, walking to school every morning, always with a smile on his face, no matter how tired he looked. It was as if the students had ignited something inside him, a sense of hope he had forgotten existed. But he still never expected that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. One afternoon, as Marcus was finishing up his work, he saw a few students standing near the janitor's closet, whispering excitedly to each other. Emma looked over at him and smiled. She could hardly contain her excitement. "Mr. Marcus," she said, walking over to him with her friends, We've been working on something, and we're ready to tell you. Marcus looked puzzled. What's this about? You kids have been so busy lately. You're not planning something crazy, are you? Emma laughed. Nothing crazy, I promise. We've been planning a surprise for you, something that we hope will make your life a little easier. At that moment, Rachel and Ethan stepped forward, holding a large envelope filled with money. We've been collecting donations for you, Rachel said, her voice soft but full of excitement. And we've been talking to local businesses too. We want to make sure you don't have to walk all the way to school anymore. We want to help you get a car. Marcus stood still for a moment, processing what they were saying. Wait a minute, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. You kids did all this for me. You don't need to do that. But Emma shook her head. We want to do this. You've been so kind and hardworking, always helping us out, and we wanted to give something back. This is the least we can do. Marcus felt a lump rise in his throat. He had never expected anything like this. He had been working at the school for so many years, and no one had ever shown him this kind of generosity. It was overwhelming. But this is too much, Marcus said, his voice trembling slightly. I didn't ask for this. You shouldn't have gone through all this trouble for me. Ethan stepped forward, his expression serious but kind. We wanted to, Mr. Marcus. You're always so humble and kind to all of us. We just thought it was time for us to return the favor. The students handed Marcus the envelope, and he slowly opened it. His eyes widened as he saw the amount of money inside. There was enough to not only help him with a bus pass, but also to make a significant down payment on a car. It was more than he could have ever dreamed of. Thank you, Marcus said softly, his voice filled with gratitude. This is more than I could ever ask for. I don't know what to say. Emma smiled brightly. You don't have to say anything. Just promise us one thing. Let us help. Don't carry this burden alone anymore. Marcus nodded, his heart full. I promise. And thank you. I don't think I'll ever forget what you've all done for me. As the students smiled at each other, knowing their plan had worked, they realized that this was more than just a way to help Marcus. It was a reminder that kindness, no matter how small, could change lives. They had made a difference in his life, and in doing so, they had learned the power of compassion and community. But little did they know, this was just the beginning of an unexpected journey that would bring even more surprises, challenges, and life-changing moments for Marcus and the students who had come together to help him. The big reveal. It was the day of the big reveal, and the school was buzzing with excitement. The fundraiser was a huge success, and everyone was looking forward to the surprise they had been planning for weeks. Marcus had no idea what was coming, but the students could barely contain their excitement as they prepared for the moment they would finally unveil their secret. Emma, Rachel, Ethan, and the rest of the team were waiting anxiously behind the school stage. The entire school had gathered for a special assembly, and Marcus had been invited to attend as well. The atmosphere was electric as the students waited for the right moment to reveal everything. Do you think he'll be surprised? Rachel asked, her voice full of anticipation. I think he'll be speechless, Emma replied with a grin. But in a good way. We've worked so hard for this. It's going to mean so much to him. Ethan nodded. It's going to change everything for him. He won't have to walk miles to work anymore. He'll have a way to get to school in comfort and on time. As the bell rang to signal the start of the assembly, everyone took their seats, and Marcus walked into the auditorium, just like he always did, calm, humble, and with a kind smile. He had no idea that today would be different from any other day. He was just grateful for the work he had, and the students had been so kind to him, always greeting him with a smile when they saw him in the halls. The principal stepped up to the podium, a smile on her face as she began the assembly. Today we have something very special planned for someone who has been an important part of this school for many years. Someone who has quietly served and shown dedication to this school, never asking for anything in return. The students looked at each other, excitement bubbling up inside them. They could see that Marcus was still unaware of what was about to happen. He sat in the front row, smiling politely as the principal spoke, but he had no idea that the spotlight was about to shine on him. The principal continued. For those of you who don't know, Marcus has been walking miles every single day to get to school, working tirelessly to keep this place clean and safe for all of us. He does this day in and day out, never asking for anything, but simply doing his job with a smile. He's a true example of hard work and humility. The audience nodded, and a few students even clapped in appreciation for Marcus. But Marcus, ever humble, simply nodded and smiled, not understanding why he was getting this attention. He didn't like the idea of being the center of attention, but he appreciated the kind words. And so, the principal said, pausing for dramatic effect, "The students of this school have decided to do something special for Marcus, something that will make his daily life a little easier, something that will show him how much we appreciate his dedication and kindness." At that moment, the doors to the auditorium opened, and in walked a car, one that was shiny, new, and clearly not something Marcus had expected. His eyes widened in shock as he stared at the car, unsure if he was dreaming. He looked around at the students, who were all grinning from ear to ear. The principal stepped aside, and Emma, Rachel, and Ethan walked up to the front, each holding a large check. "Marcus," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion, "this is for you. We've raised money to help you get a car, so you don't have to walk to work anymore. We hope this makes your life a little easier. You deserve it." Marcus stood frozen in place, his mouth slightly open, trying to process what was happening. I don't understand," he said, his voice shaky. "You did this for me." Rachel stepped forward and handed him the check. "Yes, Marcus. You've been so kind to us all. We wanted to show you that your hard work hasn't gone unnoticed. This is from all of us, the students, the teachers, everyone who cares about you. You deserve to be able to get to work without the struggle, and we want to help make that happen." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he held the check in his hands, staring at the amount on it. It was enough to cover the down payment for the car, and even a little extra for insurance. The thought of all the students coming together to do this for him left him speechless. He had never imagined anything like this would happen in his life. "I don't know what to say," Marcus said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "This is too much. I never asked for anything. I just do my job. But thank you. Thank you all so much." The audience erupted into applause, and even the principal had tears in her eyes. She knew that what the students had done wasn't just about the car. It was about showing Marcus how much he meant to them, how much his efforts had impacted their lives. As Marcus walked toward the car, his hands trembling, the students cheered for him, their faces full of joy. They had done something incredible. They had changed a life. But little did they know, this act of kindness would lead to even more surprises. For Marcus, this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with new opportunities, unexpected twists, and life-changing moments. As Marcus sat in the car for the first time, starting the engine and feeling the smooth ride, he couldn't help but smile. This was a gift he would never forget, and it was a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could create waves of change that touched more lives than anyone could imagine. The ripple effect. The days that followed the big reveal were filled with a new sense of energy and optimism. Marcus had received his car, and now, for the first time in years, he didn't have to walk miles to work every day. The difference in his life was immediate. No longer did he need to wake up at the crack of dawn, struggling to make his long walk to the school. Instead, he could sleep in a little longer, enjoy his breakfast without rushing, and still arrive at work on time. But the impact of the students' gesture didn't stop with Marcus. Word spread quickly throughout the community about what had happened at the school, and soon, everyone was talking about the incredible kindness of the students. News outlets picked up the story, and even local businesses began to take notice. The community, which had always been close-knit, now felt more united than ever before. People were inspired by the generosity of the students, and many of them began to ask themselves how they could contribute to making the world a little better, just like the students had done for Marcus. The teachers at the school were proud of their students, not just for their generosity, but for the lessons they had learned about empathy, compassion, and teamwork. Mrs. Jenkins, one of Marcus's longtime colleagues, had watched the entire process unfold with tears in her eyes. She had known Marcus for years and had always admired his work ethic and his quiet kindness. But seeing the students come together to show their appreciation for him had touched her deeply. "I can't believe what they've done for him," Mrs. Jenkins told her colleagues one afternoon. "It's a true reflection of the values we teach here at this school. To see these kids come together like this, it's inspiring." Even the principal, Mrs. Harrison, was moved by the students' generosity. She had always known they were capable of great things, but this act had proven just how powerful their compassion could be. She was proud of every single student involved in the fundraiser and couldn't help but feel a sense of pride every time she saw Marcus smiling as he drove into the parking lot in his new car. But the most surprising part of all came when Marcus decided to give back. He had always believed in the value of hard work and humility, and he didn't want to accept such a big gift without finding a way to show his appreciation. So he decided to take the students' generosity one step further. One afternoon, Marcus gathered a few of the students who had helped organize the fundraiser and invited them to the janitor's closet, where he had something special waiting for them. They entered the room, curious to see what Marcus had in mind. To their surprise, Marcus revealed a brand new toolkit, complete with all the equipment he used to maintain the school. He had spent the past few days fixing and improving various parts of the school, polishing the floors, repairing damaged equipment, and even sprucing up the garden. "I know this isn't much," Marcus began, "but I wanted to show you how much this gift has meant to me. I'm not sure how to express my gratitude, but I hope this is a small way to say thank you for everything you've done." The students stood there, speechless at the gesture. Marcus had taken the time to improve the school, and now he was offering it as his way of giving back to the place he had worked for so long. It was a perfect example of the humility and kindness that Marcus had shown throughout his entire life. Emma, Rachel, and Ethan were especially touched by the gesture. "Marcus, you've done so much for us already," Emma said, her voice full of emotion. "You don't need to do anything else." But Marcus simply smiled and said, "You've shown me that kindness isn't about what you expect in return. It's about doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. You've taught me a lesson that I will carry with me forever." As the students helped Marcus with a few finishing touches on the repairs, they realized that this was a moment that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. It wasn't just about the car or the surprise gift. It was about the bigger picture, the lesson of giving, of making the world a better place, one small act at a time. News of Marcus's decision to give back spread quickly, and soon other members of the community began to join in. Local businesses offered to sponsor new initiatives for the school, and parents volunteered their time to help improve the school's facilities. The ripple effect had begun, and Marcus's life had been changed in more ways than one. As he drove to work each day, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had led him here. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could create a chain reaction, touching lives in ways no one could predict. And while he had received so much, Marcus knew that it was the spirit of giving that had truly transformed his life, and the lives of the students who had inspired it all. And so the ripple effect continued, as more and more people took up the mantle of kindness, inspired by Marcus's story. The community had come together to change one life, but in the process, they had changed the lives of many more. A heartfelt thank you. It wasn't just the students who had been impacted by Marcus's story. The entire community felt the ripple effect of their collective kindness. People who had heard about the janitor's long walks and the students' remarkable gesture began to reconsider their own habits. They thought about the small, everyday actions they could take to make a difference in someone else's life. As Marcus settled into his new routine, no longer trudging miles to work every day, he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't known in years. The weight of his long, exhausting commute had been lifted, and in its place was a newfound appreciation for his job and the community around him. One evening, as he was finishing up his work at the school, Marcus noticed a small group of students gathered near the playground. They were talking quietly, looking up at the sky. It was one of the kids, Rachel, who noticed Marcus first. She waved him over, and he walked toward them, curious. "Hey, Marcus," Rachel called out with a smile. "We were just talking about what you did for us. We still can't believe how much you gave back after everything we did for you. It really means a lot." Marcus paused for a moment, his hand resting on his hip. He could see the sincerity in their eyes, and it warmed his heart. "You guys are the ones who made this all happen," he said with a humble smile. "I'm just here to do my part, like I always have." The students shook their heads, insistent. "No, Marcus," Ethan spoke up. "We only did it because we saw how much you do for this school. You always go above and beyond, without asking for anything in return. You're the reason this school feels like home to us. We just wanted to show you that we see you and appreciate you." His heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "But I've learned a lot from all of you. You've reminded me that kindness is a gift, and it doesn't need to be big or flashy to make a difference. It's the small acts that matter." Rachel looked down at her shoes for a moment before looking back up at Marcus. "We've all been talking, and we want to do something for you," she said softly. "We want to make sure you never have to walk that far again. We were thinking, maybe we can organize a fundraiser to help you with some other needs." Marcus was taken aback. He had never expected anything more. The car was more than enough. But seeing their determination, he realized how much they had learned from the experience. "You don't need to do that," Marcus said, shaking his head. "You've already done so much for me." But the students wouldn't hear it. They had already begun planning, speaking with local businesses and teachers about ways to gather donations. The community was still buzzing with excitement about the story of Marcus's car, and they all wanted to help. The very next day, the students set their plan into motion. They began organizing a fundraiser, this time not just for Marcus, but for the entire school. They wanted to raise enough money to create a scholarship fund for students in need, buy new sports equipment, and even build a small park in the schoolyard. Their goal was simple: make the school a place where everyone felt cared for and valued, just as Marcus had made them feel. Over the next few weeks, the school's halls were filled with flyers, bake sales, and community events. Teachers volunteered their time to organize, while parents contributed food and supplies. It seemed that everyone wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves, and all of it was inspired by the simple act of kindness from a group of students who had recognized the value of one hardworking man. As the fundraiser came to a close, the students had raised an incredible amount of money, more than they had ever dreamed possible. They had surpassed their goal and were able to help not only Marcus but the entire school. The scholarship fund was established, and they had enough money to purchase the sports equipment and make improvements to the school grounds. On the day they presented Marcus with the funds, he couldn't believe his eyes. He stood there in front of the entire school, his heart full of emotion. "I never imagined something like this could happen," he said, his voice shaky. "I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is beyond anything I could have dreamed of." The students cheered, and a few even wiped away tears as they hugged Marcus. They were proud of what they had accomplished, not just for Marcus, but for their school and their community. "This isn't just for me," Marcus said, still in awe. "This is for all of us. You've shown me that a small act of kindness can change the world, and you've proven it to me. We all have the power to make a difference, no matter how big or small." As Marcus looked out at the smiling faces of the students, teachers, and parents, he realized something he had never fully understood before: that kindness, when shared, could create a chain reaction. It wasn't about the car, the fundraiser, or even the recognition. It was about the people coming together, lifting each other up, and reminding one another that even in the hardest of times, there was always a reason to hope. The ripple effect of kindness had spread far beyond what anyone could have expected, and in the end, it was clear that the true gift wasn't the money or the car. It was the community that had been created through one small act of kindness. The ripple effect. Weeks passed, and the ripple effect of the students' actions continued to grow. Marcus found himself overwhelmed with gratitude every time he thought about how a simple act of kindness, walking miles every day, had sparked such an incredible wave of change. Not only had his life been transformed, but so had the lives of many others in the community. Marcus had been given more than a new car. He had been shown that his hard work, his quiet dedication, hadn't gone unnoticed. He felt seen, appreciated, and valued. He now realized that people did care, and all it took was a spark to ignite a sense of community and solidarity. His job, which had once felt like a never-ending cycle, now felt like a privilege. One afternoon, as Marcus sat in the teacher's lounge during his lunch break, he overheard a conversation between two teachers, Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Thomas. They were talking about how the fundraiser had brought the school together in ways they had never imagined. "Did you hear?" Mrs. Patterson said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "There's talk of using the funds to give back to the community even more. The students want to help support local families who are struggling, especially during the holidays." Mr. Thomas nodded in agreement. "It's amazing, isn't it? Who would have thought that something so small could snowball into such a big movement? I've never seen the students this excited about something before." Marcus couldn't help but listen closely. It amazed him to hear that the energy sparked by the fundraiser was still building. The students didn't want to stop at just helping him. They wanted to make a lasting impact on the entire community. They were already planning their next big project, providing care packages and holiday meals for families who were facing tough times. Later that week, Marcus was invited to a school assembly. As he entered the gymnasium, the students cheered and clapped, and it struck him how much they had truly embraced the idea of giving. This wasn't just a one-time thing. This had become a core value for everyone involved. The principal, Mr. Harris, stood at the front of the room with a microphone in hand. "Today, we're celebrating something extraordinary. It started with a simple act of kindness from a group of students, but it has grown into something much bigger than any of us could have imagined. What you've all done together is a true example of what it means to be a community." Marcus was called to the stage. As he walked forward, his heart raced. He hadn't expected this level of attention, but as the students applauded him, he felt a wave of humility wash over him. "I don't deserve all this," Marcus said, his voice shaking with emotion. "You all have done so much for me. I am beyond grateful for everything you've given. But this is not just about me. This is about what we can do when we work together and look out for each other. You've all shown me that kindness can truly change the world." The room erupted into applause. It was clear that Marcus's words had resonated deeply with the students. They understood that this was about something far greater than any one person or act. It was about fostering a sense of connection, care, and support that would last long into the future. As the assembly came to a close, the students rallied around the idea of expanding their efforts even further. They began to create plans for how they could support local homeless shelters, contribute to food banks, and help out elderly neighbors. It was as if the entire school had been awakened to the power of kindness, and no one was willing to let that spark die out. Marcus, looking out over the sea of students, felt proud. What had started as a gesture of gratitude for him had transformed into a community-wide movement. The feeling of unity was undeniable. He realized that even in the toughest of times, when everything seemed uncertain, the power of human connection and kindness could bring hope to everyone involved. The students' actions had proven that when one person shows kindness, it can have a ripple effect. It wasn't just about changing one life. It was about changing an entire community. Marcus had never imagined that his daily walk to work would lead to something as profound as this. In the weeks that followed, Marcus's life settled into a rhythm he had never known before. He no longer spent hours walking to and from work, and now he could focus on other things, helping his neighbors, attending community meetings, and even mentoring the students who had inspired him so much. The community, too, thrived. The fundraiser had sparked a lasting change that continued to touch countless lives. More and more people were paying it forward, finding ways to make their corner of the world just a little bit better. And through it all, Marcus remained a humble witness to how kindness, no matter how small, could indeed change everything. The final lesson Marcus had learned wasn't just about being grateful for what you had. It was about finding ways to give back. And through his example, the students had learned that every act of kindness, no matter how small, had the potential to ignite something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. The ripple effect was far from over, and Marcus knew one thing for sure: the heart of the community was stronger than ever.